Lewis Hamilton just found something in Ferrari's SF-26 that could decide the Australian Grand Prix before the season has even started. After more than 4,000 kilometers of preseason testing, after 0 major mechanical failures, after showing what might be the fastest one-lap pace on the grid, he didn't celebrate. He warned them. Because hidden inside Ferrari's most explosive car in years is a flaw that only appears when the temperature rises. And in Formula One, tiny weaknesses become championship disasters. The SF-26 can hit over 345 kilometers per hour. It can empty its battery in a single qualifying lap without overheating. It looks unstoppable on short runs. But over a race distance? That's where everything changes. Hamilton discovered that in hot conditions, the car starts to lose electrical punch at the end of long straights. The rear tires grip beautifully for 10 laps. Then suddenly, they fall off a cliff. Not gradually, abruptly. And that is the kind of problem that can turn pole position into damage control by lap 15. The scary part? Australia can expose exactly that weakness. So the real question is not whether Ferrari is fast. It is whether they built a car that can survive its own power. Stay until the end, because what Hamilton told Ferrari before Melbourne might reveal whether this is the beginning of a title run, or another season of what could have been. And trust me, this detail changes everything. Pre-season testing is over. There is nowhere left to hide. Across Barcelona and Bahrain, Ferrari completed more than 4,300 kilometers without a single major mechanical failure. That is the equivalent of 14 full race distances. In a brand new regulation era. On paper, that sounds perfect. And in many ways, it is. The 067/6 power unit has been one of the revelations of testing. While other manufacturers quietly battled temperature spikes and cooling limitations, Ferrari's engine ran clean, stable, efficient. On one lap, the SF-26 looks terrifying. In Bahrain, when the engine modes were finally turned up, the car did not just set fast times. It carried electrical deployment all the way down the straight. No early drop-off. No visible hesitation. Full push to the braking zone. That matters more than raw speed. Because in this new era, energy management is everything. 50% combustion. 50% electric deployment. If you mismanage that balance, you either lose performance, or you cook the system. Ferrari, at first glance, seemed to have mastered it. But here's where the narrative changes. Lewis Hamilton was not studying the fastest lap. He was studying lap 12, lap 15, lap 18. Because anyone can look good in a single qualifying simulation. Championships are decided on Sunday afternoons. And during race simulations in Bahrain, something started to appear. In cooler evening conditions, the SF-26 felt planted. Predictable. Even elegant through medium and high-speed corners. But when track temperatures climbed, the behavior shifted. Subtle at first. Then impossible to ignore. The battery cells approached their thermal limit before full discharge in hotter conditions. To protect the system, the software slightly reduced electrical deployment at the very end of long straights. It felt like the car was holding back. Not dramatically. Just enough to matter. And that is a dangerous type of problem. Because it does not scream. It whispers. It steals tenths. Then came the rear tires. For roughly 10 laps on a soft compound, the Ferrari was alive. Sharp traction. Strong rotation. Immediate response on throttle. Then the drop. Not gradual degradation. A cliff. Hamilton identified aggressive electric torque delivery on corner exit as a key factor. In hot conditions, even small amounts of wheel spin were overheating the rear surface. Once that thermal threshold was crossed, grip disappeared rapidly. That forces a driver to back off. To manage. To survive. And Lewis Hamilton does not build championships by surviving. He builds them by controlling. That is the huge problem he found. Not lack of speed. Not lack of reliability. Sensitivity. The SF-26 operates beautifully inside a narrow temperature window. Below 30 degrees Celsius track temperature, it looks like a title contender. Above that, it becomes unpredictable at the rear. Demanding. Almost fragile. And Australia is not Bahrain at night. Melbourne can swing in temperature. Wind direction can shift balance. Traction zones out of slow corners will test rear stability immediately. Which means Ferrari now faces a choice before the first race even begins. Do they keep the aggressive torque mapping and chase pole position? Or do they smooth the power delivery, sacrifice a little peak performance, and protect the rear tires over a full race distance? That decision could define the opening chapter of the season. Because Hamilton has already found the weakness. And once a driver of his experience identifies a flaw, it does not go away by ignoring it. It has to be engineered out. Or managed. And managing is not the same as winning. But the story does not stop at temperature. Because while most people focused on rear tire degradation, Lewis Hamilton was paying attention to something even more subtle: the braking phase. Under these new regulations, front axle energy regeneration is massive. When the driver hits the brake pedal, the car is not just slowing down. It is harvesting electrical energy aggressively. That changes everything. Pedal feel becomes artificial if not calibrated perfectly. The transition between mechanical braking and electrical harvesting must feel seamless. If it does not, the rear becomes unstable under heavy deceleration. Early in Bahrain, Hamilton reported inconsistency. Nothing dramatic on the radio. Just controlled concern. But for a driver whose greatest strength is late braking precision, even a small variation is unacceptable. So he stayed late. He went through data corner by corner. Entry phase. Mid-rotation. Throttle application. And this is where the SF-26 began to reveal both its brilliance and its danger. When the brake-by-wire system is perfectly synchronized with regeneration, the car rotates beautifully into slow corners. Hamilton even discovered a way to use regenerative braking to help pivot the rear. That is advanced control. That is championship-level adaptation. But when temperatures rise and the system begins protecting the battery, that same regeneration behavior changes slightly. Subtle variations in energy harvesting alter weight transfer, alter rear stability. And when rear tires are already sensitive to heat, those micro changes amplify the problem. This is how small weaknesses become big consequences. Now connect that to Melbourne. Albert Park has heavy braking zones followed by traction-limited exits. If braking feel shifts even slightly over a stint, tire surface temperatures rise faster. If rear grip drops suddenly, the driver cannot attack out of corners. And if he cannot attack, he cannot control the race. That is what Hamilton found. The SF-26 is not fundamentally flawed. It is highly tuned. Almost too tuned. It is engineered to operate inside a precise thermal and mechanical window. When everything aligns, it looks like the fastest car on the grid. But when that window shifts, even slightly, performance falls away more abruptly than Red Bull's more linear package. Red Bull degrades gradually. Ferrari drops. That difference defines race strategy. Because with gradual degradation, you can plan. With a cliff, you react. And reacting is rarely how championships are won. There is also the psychological layer. Charles Leclerc is naturally aggressive on entry. He thrives in cars that rotate sharply. Hamilton prefers stability on power. If the rear becomes unpredictable when hot, that shifts development direction. Who do you prioritize? Do you refine the car toward smoother torque delivery and wider operating range? Or keep its explosive peak and trust drivers to manage? Inside Maranello, that debate is already happening. And remember, testing is finished. Updates for Australia are limited. A revised floor. Minor diffuser tweaks. Cooling refinements. But no team can completely redesign thermal behavior between Bahrain and Melbourne. Which means Ferrari may arrive in Australia with the same narrow operating window. If the weekend stays cool, the SF-26 could dominate qualifying. If temperatures spike, the weakness Hamilton found could appear immediately. And that is why this moment is so important. Lewis Hamilton did not discover a catastrophic flaw. He discovered a sensitivity. And sensitivity in Formula One is the difference between controlling the championship or constantly defending it. The question now is not whether Ferrari is fast. They are. The question is whether they can make that speed survive Sunday. Because in Melbourne, we will not be watching lap 1. We will be watching lap 15. And that is exactly where this story explodes. And this is where the pressure becomes real. Because once a driver like Lewis Hamilton identifies a weakness, the entire development direction of the team shifts. Not publicly, not dramatically, but internally. Engineers begin running simulations not for peak lap time, but for stability curves. They study rear surface temperature evolution. They adjust torque maps by tiny percentages. They test softer delivery profiles on corner exit. And every adjustment comes with a trade-off. If you smooth the electric torque, you lose initial punch. If you increase cooling, you add drag. If you widen the operating window, you might sacrifice the explosive edge that made the SF-26 look unstoppable on Wednesday in Bahrain. This is the balancing act Ferrari now faces before Australia. Because Melbourne is not just the first race. It is the first exposure. A street circuit. Low grip early in the weekend. Heavy traction zones. Unpredictable weather shifts. And wind. Wind sensitivity has already been mentioned quietly in the paddock. With tailwind, the rear can feel lighter. Combine that with aggressive torque delivery and rising track temperature, and you have a perfect storm. Now imagine this scenario. Ferrari locks out the front row on Saturday. The narrative explodes. Hamilton on pole in red. The dream headline. But on Sunday, temperatures climb 5 degrees higher than expected. By lap 12, rear degradation accelerates. By lap 15, he is defending instead of controlling. That is the exact scenario Hamilton wants to avoid. Because he understands something deeper than raw pace. Momentum. The first race sets the tone for the entire season. If Ferrari wins in Melbourne, belief multiplies. If they fade late after leading, doubt creeps in. And doubt inside a team can be more damaging than any mechanical issue. There is also another layer most people are not discussing. Energy clipping under extreme heat. When the battery reaches thermal limits, electrical deployment is reduced slightly to protect reliability. It is subtle. But in a race situation, that could mean losing overtaking capability at the end of a straight. Or failing to defend into a braking zone. In testing, you can manage that. In a wheel-to-wheel fight, you cannot. That is the huge problem Hamilton found. The SF-26 is extraordinary inside its ideal window. But Formula One races are rarely ideal. They are chaotic. Dirty air. Traffic. Safety cars. Changing wind. Changing temperature. And if a car's performance drops sharply instead of gradually, strategy becomes reactive. Red Bull's strength has always been predictability. Ferrari's challenge now is stability. And here is the final twist. Hamilton is not discouraged. He is focused. Because finding the problem early is an advantage. He would rather identify the weakness in February than in July. He would rather enter Australia aware than surprised. That is why his tone after testing was calm. Measured. He knows the base is strong. He knows the engine is powerful. He knows the braking confidence, once adjusted, is better than what he drove in recent seasons. But he also knows championships are lost through small thermal sensitivities. So as we head to Melbourne, everything comes down to one question. Did Ferrari build a weapon? Or did they build a weapon that is too sharp for its own good? Because in Australia, under real pressure, in real heat, with real consequences, we are going to find out whether the problem Lewis Hamilton discovered is a minor adjustment, or the first crack in a title campaign.